I'm Isaac and I love shooting portraits using Fujifilm cameras. Today, I'm super excited to share with you my 2023 camera setup. My favorite things to shoot are fitness photos, family portraits, advertising work, and of course, personal photos with my wife, dogs, and friends. So this setup is very optimized for taking photos of people. The first camera we've got in my camera bag is a Fujifilm X-T4. Now I've been shooting with this for a couple of years now and I absolutely love it. Before this we were shooting with X-T3s and those were great cameras, but I much appreciate the better rear screen, the bigger battery which gives me longer battery life, and the in-body image stabilization system which is really great when shooting in dark environments or using slow shutter speeds. Even though this camera's been out for years now, I think it's still an amazing camera and I could keep using this for years without any complaints. If you do some videography with your camera, you'll definitely love the flip screen on the X-T4. However, if you're mainly doing photography, I personally prefer the tilt screen on the X-T3 and the X-T5. It just feels nice that when you're taking a photo, the image you're seeing is in line with the lens rather than hanging out the side when you're trying to do a low angle or high angle shot. If I'm going to put an on-camera flash on or a huge lens and shoot for hours, I'll use the battery grip. This gives me better balance in the hand, but I find when I'm using smaller prime lenses, I just don't need the extra balance of the battery grip and it makes the whole camera heavier without giving me enough extra benefits. My second body is a Fujifilm X-H2. Now I only recently got this after upgrading from an X-T4, and this is a great second camera to have. My favorite things about it compared to the X-T4 is the much better grip. So I find this just feels much better in my hands, and the shutter position is in a much nicer spot compared to the X-T4, where it feels like you have to do a weird hand position just to hit the shutter button. However, I didn't realize how much I'd missed the top dials. They're just so much fun on the X-T3 and X-T4 and just make photography feel more exciting. This feels a bit more like a computer, like a Sony camera. Aside from the grip, the biggest noticeable difference between this and the X-T4 is definitely the autofocus system. So compared to the X-T4, the autofocus in this is much improved. So I found even when I was running around the house trying to get photos of my dogs, they just come into autofocus instantly instead of the X-T4 that it sometimes hunt, especially in low light against dark subjects. And then when we're out on a photo shoot, my wife commented straight away saying how much better the autofocus is. So I don't think it's quite at Sony or Canon level, but this is a big upgrade from the X-T4. If you're shooting super fast action like motorsports or some sports, I'd say Fujifilm probably isn't the system for you, but for anything else, the autofocus is definitely good enough. As for lenses, the first lens I'd recommend is the Fujifilm 23mm f1.4. Now I recently got the newer weather sealed version of this lens, but even before that when I had the old 23mm f1.4, the images that it took were just amazing. The subject would really pop off the background and the lens was wide enough to give you a bit of environmental context so you can see what's going on in the background, but it also had great subject separation, so your subject would really pop off that background, and I just really love the look and the focal length. The 23mm focal length is super easy to work with. You can get nice and close shots by getting really close to your subject, or if you take a few steps back, you can really take in the whole environment, and either way the shots come out looking great. If I could have only one prime lens for the Fujifilm system, I have to choose this one, as it's the most versatile, and really you could do 90% of your photography with just this lens. The next lens is my absolute favourite lens for any camera system ever, and that's the 56mm f1.2. This was the first lens I bought after getting a Fujifilm camera, and it made me fall in love with the system even more. I found that I loved the look of the images coming off this lens so much, I didn't even care about the subpar autofocus or the fact that they weren't the sharpest photos I've ever taken. This is the equivalent of a full frame 85mm f1.8. So if you got an 85mm f1.4 on a full frame camera, you could actually get more background blur than what this provides. However, in all the photos I've taken, having this lens for the last 3 years, there's never been a shot that I've shot at f1.2 where I've wanted more background blur. Usually I'm stopping down to try and get a bit more detail in the background rather than just a blurry mess. So although the background blur isn't as crazy as you can get with an f1.4 on full frame, I've never felt like I'm missing out on anything when I'm using this lens. My next favourite lens is the Fujifilm 90mm f2, which I've got in the side passage here. So my favourite things about this lens is how sharp it is and how great the autofocus is. This is the sharpest Fujifilm lens I own, and it's also the fastest focusing, so it's really nice to work with. Because this is a telephoto lens, I found it much easier to work with once I got an X-T4 and had in-body image stabilization. That's because it's so zoomed in that if you don't have that turned on, the image feels very shaky. Now when you take the shot with a fast shutter speed, it'll still be super sharp, but it just didn't feel as nice. And when I started using IBIS, it felt so much nicer to work with, and even the autofocus felt like it was working a lot better as the image wasn't so jittery. Another great thing about this lens is its minimum focus distance of only 60 centimeters, which is 2 feet. So that means you can get super close to subjects. Now, it's not a macro lens, so if you want to get close-ups of insects or other things that are super small, you're definitely not going to be able to do it with this. But if it's any normal thing you want to shoot, like some sort of product you're interested in, or a close-up of somebody, or details on something, I find 99% of the time this is good enough, and it's so good in fact that I've never felt the need to purchase a dedicated macro lens. The only downside of this lens is the working distance. So although it can focus super close to the lens, if you want to fit somebody's whole body in there, you really have to get further back than you would with some of these other lenses. The next lens is my general purpose zoom lens, which is the 16 to 55mm f2.8. If you're looking for a zoom lens for the Fujifilm system, I'd highly recommend this. I previously had the 18 to 55 and then upgraded to this, and when I did, I realized this had so much better looking images. Just the subject really popped off the background, the bokeh looked nicer, it was a much better at autofocus, and having constant f2.8 was really helpful. I also appreciate that this is 16mm on the wide end compared to the 18mm on some of the other Fujifilm zoom lenses. It sounds like a small thing, but being able to zoom out to 16 actually makes a big difference in practice, a lot more than the number would suggest. I also appreciate that this zooms in to 55mm, which is an 85mm full frame equivalent. So this means compared to my 24 to 70 on a full frame camera, I'm getting that little bit extra reach using this lens, even though it's no bigger than a 24 to 70 on a full frame. This is one of the bigger, heavier Fujifilm lenses, so if you're going to be shooting with this for more than an hour, I definitely suggest chucking on the battery grip. You'll find that once the battery grip is on there, the whole thing feels balanced in your hands and is much more comfortable to use for long periods of time. I love prime lenses, but this is a great option if you're shooting something like a wedding reception, where you need to be able to run around using one lens and get a wide range of coverage. I'll also give an honourable mention to the 35mm f2. This is a sharp and fast focusing lens, but I find I don't use it much for professional work as I gravitate towards the 23mm and 56mm focal lengths, and this sort of just sits awkwardly in between the two. However, it's perfect for a day out with a family. I love that it's small and light and weather resistant, so I can just take it everywhere with me and get some great photos of the family. I'll also give a quick shout out to the 10 to 24mm f4 lens. This is the lens I use the least of all of my lenses. However, it gets enough use to justify keeping it for now. This lens has paid itself off with a few real estate photography jobs that I've done, and it's also a great option if you're looking for a vlogging lens, say for a family vacation, as you get the range of focal lengths covered in this one lens. The next thing in my camera bag is something I only pack if we're shooting family portraits or if I'm hanging out with friends taking some photos and I want to give them something to remember the moment by. And that's the Instax SP2 Printer. When I was first buying this a couple of years ago, it felt like it might have been one of those things that you buy, use once, and then it just sits in the cupboard forever, never getting used again. So I felt a bit risky buying it, but I haven't regretted it. Every time we do family portrait photos, as we're wrapping up for the day, I'm packing up the camera gear, my wife will grab this, print out a few photos of the kids and the parents, and give them to them at the end of the shoot. I got this cheap case off eBay, which makes it easier to print photos, as you can have the printer dangling off your body, freeing up both hands to use the camera to choose the photo that you want to print. Often the families will post photos of these physical prints to social media, which is great for us as it's free advertising. I've also got some other goodies in this bag, including some lens filters up top. So I've got a couple of different size ND filters, which are good on really bright days when you're trying to cut down the light. On this side of the bag, I've also got some flash accessories and some extra Instax paper, just to make sure I never run out. On the other side here, I have some business cards tucked in. This is because sometimes we'll be on a photo shoot and then somebody else sees the photo shoot and will come over and ask for our contact details. So it's super quick and easy to just give them a business card that has our Instagram and website on there, rather than trying to stop the photo shoot while we get them to type in our Instagram handle on the spot. I've also got a cleaning kit in here, so I've got some spray-on lens cleaner as well as a microfiber cloth. This is because we'll sometimes do photo shoots on the beach or somewhere else dirty, and the front of the lens will just get a bit grubby, and so we can just spray this off easy, and it saves trying to Photoshop out all that stuff later. I've also got a couple of spare AA batteries in here, that way if our flash triggers die, I can just quickly chuck in new batteries because I've always got some with me. As for the outside of the bag, we've got a couple of side compartments here, and this is where I keep the camera straps. So we don't always use these, but when we do, they're nice and easy to get access to. Now my favorite is this one, which is a Peak Design Slide Lite. Now this is super thin compared to some of the other camera straps we've got, like the one I've got in this side, but it feels super strong, so I never feel like I need something more. However, if you are wanting a bigger camera strap, we've also got this one, which definitely looks a little bit cooler, but it definitely adds a lot of bulk to the camera, so I find I don't use it much. I've also got the Peak Design wrist strap, which is super easy to get into, but a bit awkward to get out of sometimes. Now I only use this on special occasions, mainly when I'm shooting in the water on the beach. So this means that if I ever was to drop the camera, I'd be safe and there'd be no problem there instead of it landing in the water, as that's happened to one of my friends who lost a brand new Canon 5D when they first came out on that second photo shoot, just straight in the water. I've also got a few other bits and pieces I'll take with me on some jobs. So firstly is just random extra items. So this is a Prism, and sometimes I'll just hold that in front of the lens to just get a different effect, like dirty up the frame a bit and make the shot a little bit more interesting. I've also got a Godox V862 flash. Now I don't use this much. This is mainly used if I'm shooting a wedding reception or some other event, particularly at night time. So I'll chuck this on top, battery grip on the bottom, and then I've got everything I need to run around for hours and ensure that I'm getting good quality photos. I've also got these triggers here. Now this is just a super cheap JJC kit that I got on eBay for like $30. And so I mount this on the camera, and then that allows me to use this transmitter to just trigger photos whenever I want by pressing this button. Now I mainly use this if I'm taking photos of my wife and I with our dogs. Say if it's somebody's birthday or Christmas or something and we just want to set up a photo and we haven't got anybody else to take the photo, we'll use this to do it. So now that you've seen all the camera gear I'm working with, I'll show you the 3 camera bags I use and let you know in what situations I'll use each of these bags. So the first for most proper jobs is the Peak Design Everyday 20 litre bag with the zippers. So my favorite things about this bag is the build quality. It just feels amazing and feels like it's going to last for years. The zippers feel really high quality and nothing feels like it's going to break on it. Another thing I love about this bag is how you can access either side of the camera bag by taking one strap off your shoulder and swinging it around. When I first saw the promo videos on this, I thought it was one of those features that look really cool, but that you'd never use or that would be totally awkward. However, I find I use this feature quite a lot. Not on every photo shoot, but if we're shooting somewhere where I don't want to put my camera bag down, say we're on a sandy beach or a muddy forest or something like that, I can just bring the bag around, do a quick lens change, and I don't have to actually place the camera bag or my camera on the ground. Another cool thing I love about this backpack is the Peak Design capture clip. This means that when I'm in the middle of a photo shoot, I can just attach my camera to my chest, freeing up both hands so I can then go move a light stand or do whatever I need to do with my hands, and then when I'm ready, just use one hand to grab the camera and go back into photo shoot mode. So that's the Peak Design bag, which I love, but sometimes I don't need that much camera gear. So in that case, I'll use this smaller leather bag that my wife bought me years ago. I have no idea what this is. She just got it from some random store, but it's actually a really great bag, and I'll show you why. So inside, we've just got a couple of sections, and I'm surprised at the amount of gear I can fit in here. So for example, I can fit one camera, an extra lens, and then pop another camera in, and then we'll just go another lens and then we can buckle up fine. So the main times I'll use this bag is if I need more than just one camera and one lens, but not the full loadout like I'm doing a proper photo shoot, in which case I take the big bag. So for example, if I'm going to a friend's house and I haven't seen them in a while, and maybe I might take some photos and I want to take a couple of cameras and lenses to play around with, this is a great option. It just makes photography feel a bit more special, and I get a lot of comments from it from everyday people just saying, wow, really nice bag, and it's a cool conversation starter. I've got no idea that it's a camera bag full of all this camera equipment. And then finally, I've got my smallest bag. This is the Owner, the Bond Street bag, and this is a great option if you just want to take a single camera and lens with something else. So in this example, I've got my Fujifilm X-T4 along with a 23mm lens, and this is perfect for a run and gun camera setup. You can take so many good photos with this, as well as room for something else. So you can either include a small second prime lens or something like the Instax printer we were talking about earlier. So this is so small and compact that you can just chuck it over your shoulder easily, and it doesn't feel like you're carrying a full loadout. And I feel like an idiot even saying it, but it actually looks really nice and matches most outfits. So if I'm going out with friends one night, I can take this little bag with me, have my camera on me at all times, maybe the Instax printer as well, or some other accessories like my wallet, and it doesn't feel like I've got this big camera bag on me. It just feels like this little stylish man bag. And it suits everybody. It also looks great on my wife, and because it's so small and light, you can wear it for hours without feeling a lot of fatigue, unlike when you're wearing a bigger backpack and you can really feel it after a short amount of time. So that's my full Fujifilm portrait setup for 2023. I've been working on this for a number of years now, slowly evolving my setup, and I'm very happy with what I've got. There's nothing I feel that I want to upgrade to. I'm super happy with the image quality I'm getting out of these cameras and the usability. The bags are great, they're comfortable, they look awesome, and all the accessories I've got enable me to do everything I want to do. So I think it might stay this way it is for a little while, but if I do update it in future, I'll let you know in the comments below. If you do have any questions about anything I've featured in this video, or if you've got suggestions for a future video, please leave that in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video, and I hope you have fun taking photos. Nothing in this video is sponsored, everything I bought with my own money. Most of the cameras were bought new, but all of the lenses and some of the accessories were actually bought secondhand. So if you are looking at investing in a camera system, I'd definitely check out what's available on the secondhand market before investing in new camera gear, especially for lenses, which seem to hold their value really well, so are a good long-term investment.